started. All right, Jory's on the road. She's going to be running a little bit late, so we'll go on and get started on this. So we'll go on and call the meeting to order. First thing is we'll have roll call. Rick Antonese. Here. Scott Christopher. Here. Lisa Hutchison. Yeah, she's here someplace. Jory's not here. Jim Parisi. Lisa Price. Daryl Powell. Here. Craig Ryan. Dave Greaves, I'm here. Kathy Rogers.
Right here.
Dudley Wade. Courtney Edwards. Here. Robin Garza. Here. Ed Rock. Here. And Lori Benson. Okay, we do have a quorum. Now let's get back to the agenda. Is this the custom? We usually go around the room and let everybody else introduce themselves. Do we have a free mic that we can pass around?
One thing I'll ask is when you introduce yourself is just be sure and state which rack you're representing or you're here from.
Hello.
Yeah.
I am Dinah Welsh, and I'm with TETAF, and I want to remind everybody that we're being webcasted. So I guess actually, Russell, does the audience get webcasted? Russell? Oh. So I was just going to say smile and wave at your bosses, but and when you slip out at strategic times. But thank y'all for being here. We'll try to get through our business rather quickly.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brenda Putz with TETAF.
I'm Jackie Braden with Rack J.
I'm Connie Thompson with Texas J-Rack in Midland, Odessa.
Brenda Anderson, Rack H, Lufkin, Nacogdoches area.
Diana Mapp, Rack R.
Bert Corbell, Border Rack I.
Larry Ruscon, Rack I.
Eric Guerrero, Rack I.
Todd Haugen, Rack I.
Christine Reeves, TSAM, Waco.
Stephanie Albee, Hot Rack in Waco.
James Menz, Hot Rack, Waco.
Bobby Saunders, Rack A.
Lori Boyette, Hot Rack.
Justin Boyd, Rack A.
Dave Reimer, Cat Rack O.
Mickey Watson, Rack E.
LaJuan Smith, Rack E.
Shay Watson, Rack F, Northeast Texas.
Robin Gage, Rack F.
Elizabeth Stevenson, DSHS.
Andrea Holmes, Rack Q.
Melanie Tucker, Rack L.
Kara Tapley, Rack G.
Terry Rowden, Rack G.
Roger Ritchie, Rack C.
Pete Wolf, Rack C.
Martha Berry, Rack B.
Tim Berry, Rack B.
Jim Waters, Rack B.
Deborah Humph, Rack N.
Wanda Wertrick, Rack N.
Juan Laralde, Rack B.
Leanne Skates, Rack F. Liberty Bailey, Rack F.
Bertha Evans, Rack F.
Ruben Payne, Rack B.
David Smith, Rack E.
Marianne Contreras, Rack E.
Cheryl Cloud, Rack E.
Garrett Hall, Rack E.
Donna Ross, Rack C. Kim Stringfellow, Rack C.
Gina Pickard, Rack P.
Brett Dodwell, Rack Q.
Marvin Cloud, Rack E.
Jackie Betts, TSAC.
Bill Sikora, Rack C.
Mike Dillman, Rack V.
Pam Colvin, Rack V. Vilma Murphy, Rack V.
Sarah Sufrant, Rack V.
Don Woods, Rack V.
Rick Adams, Coastal Bend, Rack U.
Sean Carter, polytrauma survivor and traumatic brain injury advocate from Dallas.
Jenny Carter, Sean's mom and president of When Sean Speaks Incorporated, a 501c3.
Beth Tracy, Border Rack I.
Alejandro Garcia, Rack C.
Tammy Jones, Rack B.
Craig Daniel, Rack J.
Hey, look, and Jory Klein is here.
Hello.
I think that concludes the introductions, and we can get right into the division reports. So that there are 19 of the 22 racks represented tonight, so thank y'all very much for being here.
Okay, we're going to get started with these division reports. We're going to begin with the Acute Care Division, Lisa Hutchison.
Okay, Acute Care had a really good meeting tonight. We're discussing our stroke support symposium, which will be October 12th in Lubbock at Covenant Hospital. And we're going to try and redo the content of our support symposium. What we're going to try to do is going over the survey process, how to become a survey, how to collect data, all the different aspects, how to fill out an application, all the different aspects that go with becoming a stroke designated center. And lots of good ideas on that. And from people who have gone through a survey process, we had a lot of input from them. So we're excited about this. We're also going to try and do this symposium more than once a year now. We're going to travel the symposium to different areas. Like I said, the one in October will be in Lubbock. We're also looking at Houston and, you know, different places around the state. So if you would like for us to come and offer this symposium to your area, that if you have hospitals that are interested in becoming stroke designated centers, please let us know and we'll work with you in trying to get that to you. Any questions? October 12th. Okay.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa. Okay, we're going to move on to the EMS Division, Ed Rock.
Pull until it, there we go, sorry. Good evening. We were pleased that 100% of those present at the EMS committee were there. We had 100% attendance, which was fabulous. We discussed three things. One is we are going to move forward as one of the concepts that I think has been talked about for a while, and we're hopefully going to materialize with what we've tentatively termed the Texas EMS Leader Forum, whatever forums, plural, fori, will be. The purpose of this is to provide education resources to EMS leadership. So whether it's clinical leadership, whether it's administrative leadership, a venue to learn about what's new. I think all of us, when we read the headlines in the newspaper from the Houston area last week, when our federal agent colleagues came in to various areas, there was a lot going on in EMS on the administrative side, a lot going on the clinical side. So the group tonight came up with 12 topics that will form the basis for the Texas EMS Leader Forum. It will be a 1 hour, once a month. We're talking about how we're going to do that, either by WebEx or by secret, super cool, that thing, video thing. And the content, which we will send out for everyone to look at, to modify, to approve, includes the following. We felt like it would be useful to discuss the most problematic 157.11 rules, so those 157.11s that create the most controversy and problems. Medicare, Medicaid rules complete with PCS billing issues. Exposure management, the administrative and the clinical aspects of managing provider exposure. narcotics controlled substances, DPS, DEA requirements as they continue to evolve and change. Roles, this is the marriage counseling one, roles and responsibilities or relationships between the EMS clinical staff, the hospital staff, leaders, supervisors, and their employees. We felt like it would be useful to get an update from the state as one of the monthly webinars, communicating with elected officials how EMS administrators can communicate what may be useful and valuable best practices, insurance, liability, malpractice, and legal issues, HR, hiring, firing issues, grants, funding, opportunities, and processes, EMS wrong turns, so dealing with errors, performance challenges, and then finally, we felt like it would be valuable to get some of our C-suite colleagues from the hospital, CEOs, COOs, CMOs, on the horn to talk to us in the EMS world about what was important from the hospital's perspective from an EMS to the EMS world. So our plan is to send this out to the committee, to send it out to TETAF to look at the titles, revise them, identify the clinical expert or the expertise within our state or even external if they're available, to meet with those folks, to put together the 1 hour to work on the technology and make that available to TETAF EMS membership. And our sense was we would do it over lunch so that you could bring your supervisory staff in and learn about that. Second thing that we talked about is we have explored trying to get nurses, docs, and EMS personnel together for some kind of a conference, not to supplant the EMS conference or TCEP or ENA or BLT or any of those, but to put together a venue where the three professions could focus on some unified topics. So we talked about maybe the first one is a trauma, stroke, STEMI kind of meeting one day, not again to supplant what's going on, but a venue that ENA, TCEP, TAA, those folks could all participate in to kind of bring the leaders of those things together. And then finally, toys. We talked about toys. Dinah and Brenda brought us toys. So there is, do you want to talk about this later? You know more about it than I do, and it matches your coat, not mine, so.
Well, you can hold it, you can be Vanna, and I think some of y'all have seen the manual that we just put out that went to the trauma centers, and what we were talking about is with these types of manuals, there is the ability to put an EMS guide together. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, with these guides, and you basically go through and put the content together, but then you have the ability, say, 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, one piece of it changes, and instead of going through and redoing the whole publication, you can reprint that section, whether it's because of new legislation or guidelines or whatever. And so that was thrown out to the EMS division as a possible project to work on in putting an operational guide together, a field guide for EMS. I think there's a lot of opportunities to play with that, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but I think there might be some value in that.
So, Madam Chair, the underlying theme of what we talked about is that we want to make TETAF EMS a huge value for folks that participate in it. So they've got to get something out of EMS, and we want to start producing something that EMS entities would go to that would help them in their individual practices. And that's all I have, unless my colleagues have anything to add to that.
Questions?
I have a question. Was there any discussion of what might be the first priority to tackle?
You mean in terms of the administrative or the leadership forum? No. Oh, in terms of all of the priorities. I think from a logistics standpoint, you know, we talked about in the priorities the presence of EMS. So how do we, the value of EMS? How do we send the message to communities about what EMS does, about EMS's role? And we talked about the what was formerly the elected officials guide, which has been revised, very nicely done, how to get that out. My sense is, and this is me, this is not the committee because we haven't talked about it since that meeting, but my sense is having the EMS committee have a presence in a product probably has to be the first thing we do. Otherwise, we are going to struggle with membership issues and people asking why I should even participate if I don't see anything that's of value to me. And that, again, that's my own opinion, and again, not from the committee, but building up something that makes us a value so that we can start to do a lot more from the EMS perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Rod. We're going to move on to, I guess we'll start with Courtney Edwards and education, which will tail right into the EMS leadership.
So with the Education Committee, we met in conjunction with Pediatric and Injury Prevention. TETAF continues to actively move forward with becoming a CE provider. There's been strong headway made in that. I'm very happy, and I will let Brenda and Dinah talk about that later on. We also discussed in partnership with TTCF's Registry Committee, the Data Management Registry course will be September 14th. Registration will be coming out very soon in that aspect, but this is a great course where trauma coordinators can bring their registrars and really gain additional knowledge and working with data and using their data and knowing how to move their data forward in their programs. So that will be September 14th, and we're excited about that coming. We also continue to support the other divisions continuing to work. There's been some good headway with the pediatric committee regarding the specific pediatric trauma course that doesn't mirror EMPC or TNCC or anything like that, geared towards EMS plus hospitals targeting those that aren't typically familiar with pediatrics or that make them a little uncomfortable, but being very specific in some of the things that are pertinent to them that could help manage those patients easier for them. So we continue to work on that. We've pretty much focused the syllabus down. The high objectives are in place, and so now we're just working on getting the final nitpicky objectives in place and then moving into the content. And then working with the Injury Prevention Division of TETAF with the Injury and Violence Prevention Conference that is coming up in June, and then also transitioning into the TIPS course. And then I'll move into Robin, let her give her report if anyone has any questions for education.
Good evening. As far as injury prevention, we are working together with GTAC and TTCF Injury Prevention Divisions to bring you the Texas Injury and Violence Prevention Conference. It is a conference that's held every other year. This year it is June 20th through the 22nd. It is here in Austin at Dell Children's. You can get the information online for this conference if you Google the title, which is again Texas Injury and Violence Prevention Conference. I do understand that they will have brochures here throughout GTAC, so I urge you to pick one of those up, look at the lineup. There will be some international speakers. They're covering many topics, violence, the ME's office will be there. There will be some bullying, unintentional injury, many topics that will present a really good conference, 14 plus CEUs. 14.42 CEUs offered for that event. So I encourage you to look at that. We are planning, the Injury Prevention Division of TETAF is planning the next TIPS conference, which is your Trauma Injury Prevention Symposium. That will be held February of 2013 on the Monday immediately preceding this meeting. Location is to be determined, but as soon as we get that ironed out, we will get that information out to you. We're going to send out a survey monkey to this to this group as well as the TTCF group to find out what information you really want to hear about. What injury prevention topics are your problem area that you need more information on. And we want to focus this conference around your needs. So I encourage you, once you get that Survey Monkey, if you'll please go ahead and fill it out and submit that so that we can tailor this program to your needs. Again, this program kind of brings you the meat and potatoes of injury prevention. It will bring you some programs that you can take back to your facilities, some things that you can easily institute on your own without a lot of resource. And then the Texas Injury and Violence Prevention gives you the backbone of injury prevention. So the two work very well together, and we'll give you an offering every other year. The Injury Prevention Division will pick back up the Injury Prevention Resource Manual that we've been talking about, but other things have pushed it to the back burner. We are picking that back up. We are pulling the top two mechanisms. We're pulling falls and MVCs, and then the branch out from those, and provide you with a tangible product that you can take back that will have some good injury prevention strategies based on these two mechanisms. So you'll hear more about that as we come along. The meeting schedule, again, we have our conference call the third Thursday of each month at 11 o'clock. The June one is scheduled for June 20th, but because that coincides with the Texas Injury and Violence Conference, we're going to push that to the 27th. So the next conference call for injury prevention will be on the 27th. The information is on the TETAF listserv. And the last thing is Sean and Jenny Carter came to our meeting and shared with us a PSA that will go statewide beginning July 4th. It's a very exciting PSA. You will get the opportunity to see it. There will be a press conference in Austin with them immediately preceding the release of that. But it does focus on Sean and his message with Jenny as well. And so we encourage you to talk with them about that, and we certainly support all of their efforts in injury prevention. I said that was the last thing, but it's not. So we have three divisions that meet together. It's injury prevention, education, as well as pediatrics. And today we had a total of 10, and that included Courtney and myself. So I know there's a lot of interest in other areas, but if you have several people from your RAC attending one of those meetings, we just urge you to branch out a little bit and see what's going on with education and injury prevention and pediatrics so that we can better serve the state. Any questions?
Thank you, Robin. I'd just like to add to Courtney's report that we indeed have found an individual that fits is a good fit for to manage the CE provider project that we're working on. And I think that some of Dr. Rock's topics will give us those 1-hour courses we need to develop that application further. So I think that's going to all work together. We're very excited. So in the next couple of months, we should have that project launched, and we'll keep you posted on that. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Courtney. Appreciate all the work you're doing. Okay, let's move on to, Lori's not here, Vera Pyle with RAC.
Our committee spent most of its time talking about the dues, and you might remember at our last meeting that was a big topic because the RACs were informed that they could no longer use their HPP monies to pay the dues. And since then, there have been some meetings held with us and TETAF, and it is our feeling as a committee that we've not heard anyone in opposition of the proposal to reduce the dues by as much as 40%, I believe. Is that across the board, or is that? Yes. I think it's across the board. Yeah. In order for RACs that could no longer afford to be a member of TETAF for the price to come down and for them to then still be a member of TETAF. So it appears to our committee that that's probably working. That's probably going to work. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be RACs that struggle with that, because there are RACs that just don't get much money in the first place. We clearly want TETAF to succeed, and we truly want to stand behind TETAF initiatives. There is a concern, however, that with TETAF initiatives, at the same time, we're under pressure to perform and to succeed in a bidding process right now that is beginning for the HPP funds. This is the first year of a 5-year grant period. The first year is going to be the year where they open it up for an RFP. So the remaining 4 years may or may not be with the existing RACs. There could be other entities that are selected to manage the HPP funds. So it's very important to us that we stay focused on that as RACs and that we're successful in our interest in continuing to be the providers, the contractor. In that light, it's very important to us also that as TETAF takes steps to identify new sources of revenue and looks at ways to sustain itself, that we don't do it in a manner that might conflict with the RACs. We have heard, and I'm sure it'll come up later tonight, that TETAF may have bid on the Brazos Valley RAC to maybe lead the trauma council there, and we just want to hear more about that. Again, it's at a point in time. The timing is kind of tricky because it's at the same point in time that we are going to be up against other folks that want to compete with the RACs for HPP funding. So it's a tricky little path we're going down together here, and I think the communications that we have and the openness that we have can prevent any kind of rub. We're also open to continuing to brainstorm with TETAF on additional ways to raise revenues. There are we didn't have any brilliant ideas come up at the meeting to solve the problem, but we are open to consider ideas that come along. We got to play with the toys too, by the way. These don't work for us, but they might work for your committee, the books. And I believe everything else that I have, I would rather wait and let the meeting progress, and our questions will probably be answered as the meeting continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. I do have one question. Was there any discussion about potentially that group looking at a RAC operational guideline?
Yes, we talked about that. You and I just had a brief conversation in advance of the meeting, so there was not an in-depth discussion at our meeting. But the impression I have is that those guidelines, they're already known by the RACs, and assistance in that area isn't really something that we're looking to TETAF to help with.
I understand. Our concern was some of the RACs who have new individuals coming in, that they may have some documents or some resources to help them get off of first base. And certainly that content would have to come from the experts we have within TETAF, which would be your division. But we'll give that some other thought.
That's fine, but we need to talk 5 minutes before the committee meets.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to trauma and Lisa Price.
Trauma division that meeting before this meeting, and we had representation from 11 RACs, which was very good. First thing, Can you hear me now? Yeah. All right, sorry. First thing, we're very happy to say that the guide to trauma center designation for hospital executives has now come out and has gone to every hospital in the state of Texas, whether they were designated or not. This has been years of work. And on behalf of the trauma division, I'd like to thank Brenda Putz for her hours of time dedicated to making sure that we had a professional looking quality product to be distributed out to the hospitals. It took a lot of time. She even came one time and was stuck in an ice storm in Victoria, Texas, sacrificing time for this project, and I think that we do have a quality project, so I'd like to have a round of applause for Brenda. Much as how THA does this, the first copy was sent out to each of the hospitals free. Any additional copies that you may be interested in getting, you need to go to the website and you can purchase those at the cost, because they were fairly expensive to print and mail. There is some discussion at a later time about potentially having this available in PDF, but currently it's not available in that format. It's in that printed format. Okay, so more information about that at a later time. The second thing we discussed is the activation criteria work group. There is a group that has come together to develop a guideline for trauma centers in developing and then evaluating the effectiveness of trauma team activation criteria. We are on our second revision of that document. It's about 7 pages now, and there's still some work to be done to kind of clean up the language and stuff. And as soon as we get that done, we'll forward it to have it edited a little bit better, and then we'll be able to distribute that product out for folks that are interested in that. Next, Courtney already covered the data management registry work group, the education conference that the trauma registrars have been working on. In case you didn't get that date, September 14th in Conroe, and we're looking forward to seeing the flyer come out on that soon. Next thing we discussed were the trauma rule revisions. We put some time into discussing and reviewing the proposed performance standards and events review, and also the proposed language for geriatric and pediatric trauma center language. And if you're interested in particularly the geriatric and pediatric proposed language, those are on the DTAC website under the trauma systems portion of the website. The next thing we discussed was the language for alternative pathway for non-boarded surgeons in level 3 centers. Dr. Daniel and Marjorie Ligas are going to be working on that, and we'll have more information on that at a later time. Our next conference call will be June 12th at 9:30, and I will send out the agenda and information to join that call later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That wraps up the division reports. Oh, I'm sorry.
On the designation guide that went out to the hospitals, who did it go to, and was there a thought of sending a copy to the RACs? So
Yeah.
we would be familiar with this.
Right.
Those copies. The guides went to the CEOs, and that's who it's directed to. And there is a copy that is being sent to each RAC ED. So you should be getting that any day. Oh, absolutely. Well, and we've found a little bit of that just with the trauma coordinators. The trauma coordinators I know have been going and saying, hey, did you get that? Hey, did you get that? And we're finding it on different desks. And we appreciate the attention to it, that it's not ending up in the trash can file. So I think it's an important, valuable document. And I know Brenda has put a lot of time into that document, but Lisa as well. And we really appreciate your work and your leadership with the trauma division. Thank you. We will launch into the TETAF update. Hopefully you all have seen a copy. The most recent TETAF update was dated April 30th, and it is online at the TETAF website. There were a few copies that we made available, sort of runs down some of the activities that we've been involved with. I know many of you all are familiar that May is Trauma Awareness Month, and there's also EMS Week, which is this week. Oh wait, no, next. Thank you. May 20th through the 26th, of course. And we have compiled different resources on the TETAF website. Hope that those might be of some value to you, and activities that you can be involved with in just raising the awareness. I think it's so important. There's a lot of awareness that goes on out there. I know that May is just about everything month. But it is important that we take these opportunities to share with especially the elected officials the importance of the Texas trauma system, the EMS system, et cetera. We have the website that has compiled a lot of information. We also have a governor's proclamation that will be going out that we should be receiving any day about May being Trauma Awareness and EMS Week. And then we are also working on an op-ed that will go to major, some of the local papers as well about the importance of the trauma system. And with that, we're also asking for some volunteers. We are asking for those of you that have an interest in talking, and I know none of you do, anybody that might have an interest in talking to a radio talk show. We are working with some different radio stations around the state on doing a talk show. I've done several of these over the years, and they are, it's always interesting to hear your voice in the car later, and it's not when you're talking or singing to yourself. But they're really pretty easy to do, and if you have an interest at all in doing this, and we would hook you up with your local area radio and set up an interview. And if you have an interest at all in doing this, I'd ask you to please let me know. I'll take your name and have you work with our communications person, Ann Ward. She will walk you through what they will likely ask you, put talking points together, but more importantly, just for y'all to tell your story. Each one of you have a great story to tell about your involvement in the Texas trauma system, and the local people are the best ones to tell the story, especially to get the point across to the local elected officials. So if you have an interest, I know a few of these sheets have gone around about volunteers being needed. Please let me know. You can email me as well. We'd like to have that list compiled of people by this Friday. So if you feel called, we'll do an altar call later. So you can come up and let me know. But I really appreciate y'all considering that, and I think this is one of these exciting activities that we're going to try to get more involved in getting the message out about the trauma system, and then getting that word out to elected officials as well. The other big thing that we have been involved with in following, and I know several of you have been involved in as well, is following the regional health partnerships and how those are coming together. The reuse of some of the federal dollars and how they are working on these regional health partnerships. The timeline is very short. There's more money that's going to be coming into the state, but the concern is that it's not going to be business as usual. And I know that some of you have been involved with the conversations at your local level about how those dollars are going to be used. The state is very focused on meeting the timelines that they have set. They've got one in May, and there are several throughout the summer to be able to roll out in September. I believe it was our February meeting, and GTAC, there was some discussion about this, so some of this may be ringing as being familiar. With TETAF, we continue to follow that. We will update you. I think there's some glimmers in this as far as trauma and EMS, but it's going to be about the local level and about being involved in your regional health partnership and being at the table, because believe me, if you're not at the table, you're not going to, your needs and interests are not going to be discussed or even funded. The regional health partnerships, there was a hearing, I guess it was yesterday, I'm losing track of time, but it was the House Appropriations Committee where they talked about Medicaid funding and looking at the dollars that are being spent in the state and how to maximize those dollars. There's still a great deal of concern about the state budget and just how dollars are going to best be allocated. There's a lot of concern right now, a lot of politicking going on with the hospitals and how dollars are going to be used within the state, matching dollars, et cetera. So TETAF will continue to monitor. It's at a pretty high level, pretty intense level with especially the Medicaid dollar discussion at this point in time, but we will continue to monitor and be involved and comment and testify where it's appropriate. But I think oftentimes we've been finding here recently that the level of intensity is pretty high and nerves are pretty high. There are a couple other things that I wanted to talk about in the update that I've actually, we have specific agenda items about, and I'll just roll right into those. Daryl had mentioned the new 2012 RAC subscription fees. The TETAF board, we had an extra meeting, we had a work group meeting in March, and then in April 4th, the TETAF board did approve a 40% reduction in the TETAF subscription fees for 2012. So for a small RAC that was paying $3,000, the subscription fee will now be $1,800. For a medium RAC that was paying $6,000, the invoice will be for $3,600. A large RAC that was paying $12,000 will now pay $7,200. And the extra large racks that were paying $18,000 would now pay $10,800. Obviously, with the 40% reduction in subscription fees, TETAF will be looking at different funding opportunities with sponsorships, looking to vendors for some of our upcoming programs that we have. Going to look at sponsors potentially for our webcasting and just really anything like that. But I want to assure Daryl, I know Rick and I have had some conversations about it previously. It is not TETAF's intent to compete with the RACs. And I think that is going to be an ongoing discussion, because I can say that, and that is my intent, but I also understand the sensitivity. And I think the only way that we will work through potential issues is by continuing to dialogue with each other. Because sometimes, I know this never happens to y'all, but we have great ideas, and then we share them, and it's like, oh, wait, we didn't think about that. So our intentions are always pure. It's never to compete. I think of my role with TETAF, and I think the role of TETAF is to strengthen the RACs, period. And so if we're competing, then we're not strengthening the RACs. And so that's something that we'll have to continue to work with. And I appreciate y'all's feedback as we go along. It's not to say we won't make mistakes. If we're not making mistakes, we're probably not trying to move forward. We're probably being a little too safe. But the intent is always going to be pure. So we'll continue to work with y'all and communicate with what we're doing. The other piece that I was going to spend some time on tonight was, I know that Daryl also mentioned a proposal that we did to BV RAC, the Brazos Valley RAC. I know many of you are aware that the Brazos Valley RAC, their executive director left, I guess, last month. And so they're in a position of transition, just trying to figure out what they're going to do next, what they're going to do as far as hire. And this was an idea that had been discussed at the RAC level. I know our board has talked about it, of providing additional services. I'll look at Rick and say, not that it's his fault, but he's always talked about how we would have a la carte, that we have the plate lunch, and if you want dessert and you want this or that, then you can pay extra for these extra items. If you don't want dessert, if you don't want tea, if you don't want that, fine. Don't, it's not, but we will continue to provide a base level of service. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we are still dealing with the dishes issue of funding. So there's not, I don't think there's a reason to spend considerable, I mean, we are looking at this as an opportunity to strengthen the racks, to provide some continuity to racks, whether it's a 2-month period, a 6-month period, and as you all will see, this just outlines our current rack subscription benefits, which will remain the same. The designation survey process, educational offerings, the web streaming, the various work groups that we participate in. Rack operational guide, maybe, maybe not, system grant development, and then this is the additional rack services. You can see it's a pretty long list, and the idea has always been, if you need help with your tax filings, we have somebody that we work with that we can put you in contact, we can help to administer that. Great, we will help you with that piece. Don't need any of it? Fine. But trying to be a resource to the racks and recognizing in my travels to many of the racks, there are strengths in every single rack. But there is a great deal of difference between each rack. And that's not a bad thing. But how do we use those strengths of all the different racks, combine them together, strengthen the trauma system? And that's really the idea behind this. This is our workforce currently. Obviously, you all know Brenda and I, but it's not just Brenda and I anymore as far as the services that we contract and work with. So this is what we would be helping to administer is the relationships that we have and have been working with. And I don't want to spend, again, the idea was and is that TETAF would help to manage these services. It's not, you're not looking at a 25-hour-a-week thing. It may be that you need bookkeeping services for 4 hours in a week, and so you pay for that. And it would be on a needs basis. We would work with each rack. Maybe none of the racks will come forward. But again, the idea was TETAF, I think the idea behind TETAF has always been to be the umbrella, to be the one that helps join the racks together, to help strengthen the racks, to provide some continuity. And so that's where we are. But sort of to wrap this conversation up from my side is that we have the issue with dishes and whether the racks could pay for these services with their state funds. And I believe that answer is going to be, we've gotten some indications here and there, but I believe that answer ultimately is going to be no if they're going to be consistent. And so I think that creates some challenges for TETAF and how do we continue to be the organization we want to be and potentially provide services that could help to strengthen the racks. The idea has never been that TETAF becomes the super duper rack. I think there's been some talk about that. It really is just putting a hand out. If we can help, great. If you got it, great. And I think, you know, for a lot of the racks, a lot of you all, you have your systems down. Y'all are humming along, and so that's not the issue. But I think there's opportunities, and one of them, I think, is, you know, the grant funding. Dan Kulika, he's working with us in looking at the system and the opportunities that are out there for all of us. But you may want him to work specifically with your rack and developing a grant for your rack. And so that's something that we could help to facilitate. So again, this is all about relationships, about, you know, doing what we we hope to help in strengthening the racks. And we'll see where it goes. But the first things first, I don't think anybody can pay us out of their state funds right now. And so we've got to figure out sort of that mess of how do we continue to operate as we want to be legal. Let me say that clearly on the webcast, is that we want to meet all IRS requirements, we want to meet all DSHA's requirements, we want to meet all requirements that the racks have and respect those. So we'll continue to work through this. It's something to be tinkered with. But we did put this out to Brazos Valley Rack because we know that they were in a decision-making phase 2 weeks ago as we were developing this. I'm not sure where they stand. We've done a proposal to them. We did lay out, what we believe our cost would be, and we'll see. We'll take it from there.
Thank you, Dinah. It's just a sensitive time. This is the big year for everyone, and maybe we could just have more telephone discussions. This menu you just displayed, we probably could have used that in our discussion today during our committee meeting.
Well, and I think I did my visit to Brazos Valley Rack the same week that we put this out, the TETAF update, which that list is included in here. And so, and I recognize that y'all have a lot of information that comes your way, and that's something that we take the onus on, that we have got to figure out better ways to communicate, and we will.
Together we will
continue to work.
solve this. We will. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, I see a lot of concerns in the audience, so this would be something that would come back to the board. Can you hear me now? Okay. So this is something, I was just saying that there is a lot of confused faces out there about this. So this is something that would be brought back in for a lot of board discussion and review and clearance. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here, moving in the same direction here, okay?
Sorry, I've lost my agenda. Quickly on the TETAF grant update, there's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news is that we are still in running for the second phase of the Healthcare Innovation Challenge grant. The bad news is that they announced today the first round, and we were not part of that first round. Hate to get too optimistic, but we were optimistic, and maybe we shouldn't have been. But the second round will be announced later, in the summer, is my understanding, and so we'll continue to keep our fingers crossed. I understand that there's quite a bit of diversity in those that they did award funds to, and so I think our idea is still good, but that's not the only area that we've thrown our hat in the ring. We have put out, and I guess if you'll pass the update on, a couple weeks ago. Actually, it's been more than that. Mid-April, we did do a grant forum call and just discussed Dr. Kulika, Dan Kulika, who's providing the grant development writing services to TETAF at this point in time, and looking at how we can extend his expertise to you all across the state. We will continue to look at those opportunities that would affect multi-areas of the state, multi-systems within the state, and we'll continue to look at those opportunities and submit applications. We've just passed around this update on potential funding sources. What we're going to try to do, one of the things that came from the call is how can how can TETAF provide the grant information back to the RACs? And sometimes it's, yeah, we're interested, but we don't know what we're supposed to be interested in, and we don't know where the opportunities are. So we are going to try and put this together on a more frequent basis as we know of deadlines that are coming up, that we will be submitting a TETAF application for many of the opportunities, but also making you all aware of those opportunities. And there might be opportunities for your RAC, for your hospital to submit applications as well. And then sort of back to that opportunity of using Dan and his expertise and pushing forward some additional applications. And we will make sure, I'm not certain that this update on potential funding sources is online right now. We'll figure out how we can make sure and get that information out to you all, because we want to protect that information to a certain degree, and so we need to figure out the best way to do that. Any questions about the grant opportunities? Then the last item that I wanted to talk about is, I know in February we had talked about sort of our wish list of what we wanted to do as far as fundraising opportunities or picnics at the Capitol, etc. And given the timing and with the EMS conference being moved up a week in November, that it doesn't coincide directly with Thanksgiving, we're looking at an opportunity to do a fundraiser that weekend, that I guess is really the GTAC weekend, and then right before the EMS conference. And so we're looking at opportunities there, with the conference being right there off of 6th Street, looking at Esther's Follies. I don't know if y'all have ever been there, but there's the potential of, it's sort of a comedy review, political, it's really fun. But looking at that opportunity as a fundraiser to have a TETAF night that we basically have the place to ourselves, and they've got a bar and everything like that. And that would be something that would be easily accessible, walkable. I know that there was a lot of people liked the bat cruise last year, but they would like for it to be cooler. And the problem with that is most of the bats, you see more bats when it's the hottest. So August is really the best time for that. And I think we should sort of change it up a bit. And so with the board's approval, we will move forward with trying to secure some ideas and suggestions to put forward to the board at our next conference call about fundraising ideas to flesh out a little bit more the Esther's Follies and then some other opportunities that are along 6th Street potentially.
Anybody have any questions for Dinah? Anybody in the audience have any questions for Donna regarding the update or sections that she covered? Any questions about the subscription fees? Okay. Nobody?
Thank you. Good question. The idea is that the invoices will go out next week, and they will be due the end of June, so June 30th.
Minor question, comment, but since we changed dues to subscription fees to accommodate the Department of State Health Services, should we just go back to calling them dues?
Call them what they are.
Afraid to call them anything.
No.
Yeah, membership.
Call them whatever you want. Just call me.
Any other questions? Okay. Is Mr. Parisi going to present the treasurer's report?
He is vicariously through me. This is Jim was not able to be here in Austin this evening, obviously, and just wanted to run through where we are one of the things to take into consideration, we have obviously our expenses and income. That sounded sort of silly. But the bottom line is that we are doing well with our expenses and net income for the year. And that is given that our dues, our subscription fees or dues, were supposed to have gone out, and we should have received those in March. So our income is a little ahead of where we had expected, but it's usually about this point in time in our year that we see the subscription fees help to sort of normalize our budget for the year. So we've been able to keep expenses down, and I feel comfortable with where we are. We'll continue to watch those expenses with our subscription fees going down. The survey fees, the surveys that we're doing are tracking what we had expected, with trauma maybe slightly ahead. We are obviously behind on where we thought the stroke surveys would be. That continues to be an issue, but I think there's every indication that those will start picking up, but it won't be this fiscal year that we'll see that really pick up. So we are financially viable at this point in time, and we'll continue to look for, with the subscription fees reduction, we'll continue to look for additional sources of income. And I think one of the areas that we are behind on so far for the year is contribution income. And that's something that we had really focused on with our fundraiser last year, was what really helped us with contribution income. We also have a TETAF brochure that we're putting together that will be going out that we hope will help with bringing in additional donors to the organization.
Is there either anecdotal or deliberate feedback from RACs with regard to how many will pay the subscription fees / dues? Obviously, the proof in the pudding is after the invoices go out, what do you get back? But it's been a topic of discussion for a few months, so I was just curious if there was any deliberate feedback to you guys as staff.
I think everything that I've gotten has been very positive. Some of it may be wishful of, we support TETAF, we want TETAF to do well. However, our RAC is going to have to put pen to paper to figure out how we can make this work. I guess I don't know. There are enough that have told me we're concerned. We don't have unrestricted funds at this time, or we have each one of you have limited unrestricted funds. So I don't know. I just don't know. We're hopeful, we're optimistic, but we'll see.
Scott? Is there any other questions on the financial report from Dinah? If no, then we'll move to Scott with the secretary's report.
Yeah, all I have is the minutes from the March 7th, 2012 meeting, the conference call meeting, have been posted on the website for a while, and we just need to review those and pass them. So,
We need that in the form of a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Any correction? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, also say aye. Motion carries. No, that's fine. That's the reason I asked the question. Dinah, can you go back?
What? Yeah, I can see it just fine. Sorry, y'all. Down to the bottom. Down to the bottom.
Any other comments, questions? That is posted on the website so people can view that. No? Any other questions on the finance before we leave that? The next issue is open discussion, so I'll just ask anybody in the audience, does anybody have anything they want to bring up? You guys are quiet? Well, I'll bring up something. Last night we met with the registry group. We had a trauma systems meeting specifically to give the registry group an opportunity to present their updates. I will tell you that I thought it was a positive meeting, but I also left the meeting with some concerns. And so the concerns are the ability to have a functional registry for the state of Texas. So I just want to say that I think that we can have a functional registry if we all work together and move in that direction. I think that the group has heard from some of the experts that we need to take those screens apart and rebuild them. In addition to that, the data elements need to be clearly defined. Those of you that were there, I think, there were several key topics that were brought out that will be presented tomorrow at the Trauma Systems Committee. But I just want to make sure everybody in this room knows that your voice is going to be extremely important as we move forward with this registry. There's a stakeholders group. I know that there's been discussion with the stakeholders. It's my understanding from those stakeholders that have been on that committee that they're talking, but sometimes there wasn't a lot of communication back. And so this is a time I think we all need to be in the room, clearly communicating what we need for a Texas trauma registry. This is going to be extremely important for us to have a functional registry 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. So we just want to open up the discussion. I know I see Garrett. Is Mary Frost in the room? I just want to give you a chance if you want to make TETAF aware of any of the issues with the registry. This is your opportunity. Those of you that were present yesterday, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and especially staying there till 7:30 at night as we went through all of the issues. But this is a critical point for the Texas trauma system and the EMS system for Texas.
Joy, from the meeting last night, are there next steps as far as what we can do to be involved and to help at this juncture? I mean, obviously the experts are at the table, and you've mentioned them. How can we help to support them?
I think the clearest message is, when I talked to Dr. Valdez and Dr. Suarez, they were quite concerned about what was going to happen at the meeting last night. I gave them my guarantee that we would keep it politically correct, and I believe we did. But at the same time, I voiced our concerns that the most important thing we want is a functional registry. So is there anybody that disagrees with that? So I think the next step is I asked them for a commitment that they would meet with us every time we have a GTAC meeting so we can have open discussion to see where they're at, what's being developed, and have an actual opportunity to review it. Last night they did not have an opportunity to present their information, so they have promised that as we meet in August and as we meet in November, they will come forward with that. I sent out an email to everybody that I knew and asked them to forward it. If you want to send them your screenshots of your registry or the timelines, in other words, one of the things that we noticed, and Garrett brought it to my attention, is as they build the registry, they would put data elements here, and then you'd have to get out of that screen and go to another screen, and you were going backwards and forwards. Well, we saw that when we built a registry back in 1987. And so what we clearly need to do is make sure that those screen entry or that data entry issues is conducive to the registrar's ability to enter that, so it's productive and not in and out of screens all day long. So that was one issue. Now, with that said, there was a great concern about the proprietary issues with each of the registries that we all have in our house, right? So the bottom line is the next steps is, I know that they're going to meet with us in August. I know they're going to meet with us in November. They will be at the Trauma Systems Committee tomorrow. They'll probably be at all the GTAC meetings asking for your feedback. I just ask that you be open and honest and politically correct, that we need a registry that functions. And I don't think we're asking for anything impossible. We're asking for a functional registry that works for the state of Texas. And sometimes the trauma registry is not going to match what we need for cardiac, and it's not going to match what we need for strokes. But the registry that we're talking about specifically is the trauma registry, and it needs to be functional with AIS scores, the ability to calculate the injury severity scores, and so on. So with that said, if you have input, you have reports that you would like to see generated, that was another question. Send those documents forward. Tammy Sajak has agreed that she would take all of those and look at those. So that's your opportunity. So if you're not comfortable stepping forward to say, hey, I don't like this, then at least communicate to Tammy what your concerns are.
One of the things that I've heard a fair amount in the last 24 hours, or actually more than that, is about the AIS codes, and that right now, the way the registry is headed, that there's only room for one AIS code. First of all, is that true? And if so, do you get the sense from the state that there's understanding of, oops, we need to step back and reassess, or...
They're not here, so I don't want to say what I
Right.
can or can't do. And I want to protect Garrett politically. But I can tell you that a lot of things that there was concerns have been raised, and we've been told that they will correct those issues. And this is why I think it's extremely important that the stakeholders really get involved in this process.
Garrett Hall, Trauma Center at Parkland, member of the Registry Solution Work Group. So we had over the past 2 days, we've had a lot of productive conversation about the registry. This morning, we did speak with the level 3 and level 4 trauma centers who would be primarily doing the direct data entry into the registry. And we got overwhelming response. I don't want to speak for all of them. They can come up if they're here to speak. But they wanted us to include performance improvement within the registry, which we got conflicting information on that. And so with that, the state has asked for myself or anybody that knows people that would like 5 to 6 people to join our group as experts in PI to finish the build out of the PI section of the registry. Not saying that the level 1s, level 2s, no center has to submit their PI information, but thinking in the future, if our state ever wants to travel down the road of collecting standardized PI for our state, then we already have it built versus just sticking within TDB data elements. So that's where we walked away today. The other item is we do, my personal opinion, but we do need to go back and reassess. And we define the data elements, but we never went the next step of building the data dictionary to show them the flow of how the registry should be. And we need to really push forward for that. Tammy did speak with me, and she offered for one day for several experts to meet and develop a draft data dictionary in Austin. So we will probably be looking for people if they can come to Austin for one day and meet with the state to get that draft data dictionary done so that we can rebuild the screens as needed for the new registry. So that's where we are as of now, is my understanding from speaking with Tammy with the registry.
Thank you, Garrett. Garrett?
There was a moment in time in the fall. The USS Cole was bombed. The Supreme Court ruled that Governor Bush was going to be elected after the hanging Chad, and the PlayStation 2 was invented. The fourth big event of that fall was we started the journey of Track It. over 12 years ago. It is a travesty that we're having a discussion about trauma data registries after more than $7 or $8 million has been spent with off-the-shelf products that cost $500,000 or $600,000. That this is bureaucracy run amok, and we need to call a truce or something.
So Eric summarized my comments with Dr. Valdez so very nicely. So here's what the feedback is, and this is something that I think the stakeholders really need to understand. The money's already been spent. So, you know, I hear one group say, fire them, get rid of them, this is a registry that works, get it in here. The money's already gone. The money's already committed, it's already gone. So, unless we can find vendors that are gonna come in here and do things for free for us, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what my ideal is, and nobody has a recorder on, do they? Is to let the state, we have to be involved in this. If we're gonna have anything productive, we have to get involved. But at the same time, we need to build a redundant system, and I think that redundant system needs to be build the RAC registries. The RAC registries need to be strong, and maybe it's 2 or 3 RACs together building a strong RAC registry, and have that data feed into other databases so that we have strong data for the state of Texas. It is difficult to make decisions when you don't have good data. If you've been to a trauma systems committee, you've seen we have data, but we have data with holes in it, flaws in it. Part of it's our accountability that we didn't send it in right the first time. But the second piece is, you know, it's not managed appropriately. I have 6 FTEs at Parkland that manage the trauma registry for 3,500 patients. They have 6 FTEs at the state to manage 2 million records. There is a problem. The eagle hasn't landed. But I really believe if you guys get involved, we can fix this. Or we can do what Eric says, is say, at some point in time, it's a futile resuscitation.
Well, the other thing that concerns me as far as the staffing of the registry office is, yeah, they got 6, and well, maybe that is enough, but none of those 6 have training in trauma systems, trauma registry, coding. I mean, it'd be like me opening up a mechanic shop and I don't know anything about how to change a spark plug for the most part. But bring your car to me, you know? So, I don't know, that's a big concern I have. I think they need some training, go hire somebody, you know, go hire a Garrett to,
I agree. I mean, the thing that's hard for me to understand is, you know, to me, there's nobody that's 100% dedicated to managing that registry. That really bothers me because everybody has another job. So again, these are all comments that have been made to that group. My request to you is there's 2 ways we can do it. If you go out like a lynch mob, all it does is create absolute defense and it makes people shut down. I have a tendency to do that. So I'm trying to be politically correct here. So my request is if we work together in a positive format, I believe we can get ourselves there. And positive format doesn't mean we don't have difficult conversations. Sometimes difficult conversations are very productive. Any words of wisdom, Mr. Consensus?
That all went away. You know, when you're chair, you have to be, but crap, man, I didn't mean any of that stuff. Actually, I do have a comment. Probably for the first time in my career, I agree 1,000% with Eric. There's got to be a there has to be a support group out there somewhere to help me get
And
back
Eric,
to
you
my
can
life.
go back and watch the video to see that this really happened.
But and actually, Eric, when you were talking about that, and as this discussion evolved, I sat here astounded that we were still there, not because people haven't been working on it, but because the efforts have yielded product that's no good. And, you know, one of the things that I think as a state we do need to look at, as I travel around to many, many states now, when you talk about trauma data in many, many states, I think as everybody knows in the room, they're talking about their data. They're struggling with injury types. They're struggling with engineering issues surrounding that. They're moving legislation forward because they've got data that talks about what's going on in their communities. Health insurers, the payers, are paying based on demonstrating performance. The CMS innovation grants that we are a part of are solely based in the fact that you can take good data, whatever you do, whether it's geriatrics or renal dialysis or trauma or cardiac disease or primary care, you can take that data, fix the system, improve health, improve patient outcome, and do it more efficiently. So we're struggling with even having the basis to start that. And I think one of the questions would be, and I don't mean to be Mr. Consensus here, but you know, Eric's kind of right. Would it be worth, and we talked about this almost 5 years ago, stop collecting data, and I know this is controversial, stop until we can collect it in a way that we can turn right around and use it to be productive. Otherwise, we're taking human being resources and time and continuing to build this sandcastle that keeps getting washed away by the ocean. So I would agree, and I agree that consensus and doing it in a productive way is the best way to do it. But sometimes the reality, the aviation industry does it best. When something's not going right, they stop. They stop and say, we're broken. And until we figure out exactly what's going on, we don't move forward again. So I am frankly surprised. And I think other states, Eric, you're right. There's off the shelf. I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that a lot of states will have meetings just like this. And the state will actually take data on the fly, superimpose it over a map, and say, well, you know what, it looks like in the southern part of Nevada, and I'm making up a state here, we have a problem with XYZ. We can't get anywhere near that, and we could potentially be answering more questions than any other state in the U.S. with our trauma data.
How do we get everybody back on board again to do what you're trying to do? So when we went back through this process 5 years ago, we promised all the stakeholders input, the state was going to listen, and as a RAC, we begged and pleaded, please fill out all the surveys, please come to meetings, please voice your opinion. I assure you that when this rolls out again, it's just as bad. Nobody is going to come just because Christine asked them to take another survey or to do, I mean, you know, I'm afraid that we're losing stakeholder input because they feel, now this is trip number 2 down the same aisle with nobody listened, they promised, and didn't deliver. And I'm not sure that a lot of the stakeholders have trip number 3 down the aisle.
That's exactly what part of my comment was, is this is the last chance to really try this type of build. There's an opportunity to schedule more frequent meetings. They've committed to doing that, whatever it takes, but that means y'all have to come to the meetings. Eric, you want to say something?
I'm not going to come to more of their meetings. They can come to our meetings, give us a report, but I'm not coming to more of their meetings. I've done it for 12 years. Driven up here for every tractor thing, I'm not doing it. I will, however, put my money where my mouth is, because I'm not putting my money in. This is a weed project. We will agree right now to take any and all DI collector registry users, and they can submit it to
stop. We redirect to where it can actually be functional, and then we show them what it actually looks like. That will blow them out of the water. We could take $7 or $8 or $9 million they wasted, and in an afternoon, I mean, I hate to say it like that, this is great, this is lunacy. This is not rocket surgery. We are making this harder than it is, for I don't know why. How many DI collector users are there? Shit. I mean,
George?
it's a revolt.
You know, maybe one of the things, if indeed, Eric, you can do that, I mean, if indeed that's possible, and if indeed there are other states that are doing things that are productive, maybe the next step is to take those things that do work, those states that do have product, sit down with our own state and say, here we are, here they are. Now, how do we get to where they are quickly, effectively, so that we can stop doing this? Because here's my sense. My sense is the relationships are so busted here. They're so, I mean, they were busted when I left the first time, but they are now so busted that unless there's a mutually agreed upon product that everyone can swim toward, we're going to fight back and forth and never come to resolution. I think holding it, seeing it, and they're aware of it. They see their colleagues. They see it at NASEMSO. They see it throughout the country. But I think in a venue where we can say there's A, B, C, and D, and by the way, we're B, and we can't even figure out who's wearing seat belts.
This is like Charlie Brown and Lucy. And we're Charlie Brown, by the way. We're the ones that keep going. She probably won't pull the football. There'll probably be a state registry this time. And then we're laying on the ground going, oh, nuts. It's like, how many times are they going to pull the football? For whatever reason, they pull the football and go, woo! Hey, I mean, I'm seriously. There are 38 states and the National Trauma Data Bank using one product. How hard is this? I agree with what Ed says. We need to come to them and try to bond later, but you can't have fidelity if there's not mutual respect and mutual understanding. And the problem right now is there's not that. I think we have a loss of fidelity with the relationship around the trauma registry, and people are done being Charlie Brown laying on the ground. I am.
So that's, who's the direction elsewhere there? So you go to mediation, if everyone's so sensitive to ineffectiveness on both sides, who's being agreed here?
Well, last night I was that person. I made a promise to them that I would make sure that nobody got beat up in that meeting and that we could speak honestly about the issues. And so this conversation needs to take place tomorrow. The exact comments needed to come forward. I mean, I kept asking last night, anybody else have anything else they want to say? You know, and as long as you're not using foul language, I'm pretty happy for you to use any language, you know. I mean, I think this is critical for our state. I travel all over the United States. When I think about what people have as resources for trauma center development, trauma systems development, I don't see another state that has what we have. What we don't have that they have is data. And it's very, very frustrating. So, with that said, you know, you have the opportunity to be at the Trauma Systems Committee tomorrow and raise your voice. Don't raise it too loud, no cuss words. In addition to that, you guys have the opportunity to band together. You guys have the opportunity to get involved. They're asking for your stakeholder input. You guys have the opportunity to submit ways you want the data to be used. They asked you for reports last night. So it's in your ball court now, as far as I'm concerned. The message needs to come from the people who collect the data. That's my greatest frustration. We have to collect the data. We're held accountable to have good data, quality data, validated data, and we send it forward, and yet there's a gap there. Okay? Now, that being said, I want to take just a minute to recognize, you guys may not recognize this, but the state of Texas has been moving forward with the trauma systems development for a number of years. In 1989, the omnibus bill was actually passed, which meant that there would be federal funding to develop the system. In 1992, the first TETAF group actually proposed rules for trauma systems and EMS systems development, and they were passed. So the state of Texas is very fortunate. Many of you were in this room then. Some of us may be here another 15 years if we don't get this registry built. So I just want to say thank you for your commitment. It's been a journey. There are many other things that have taken place. How many of you know that your RAC is 20 years old? Our RAC is 20 years old. It was developed and the bylaws passed in 1992. Stand up if you've been involved in that process along the way. Stand up. I didn't say raise your hand.
It's all the
There
old
you go.
people that can't stand.
No, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. They need to be recognized because it's because of them that we have continued to move forward and we don't have a lot of gaps. So, you know, I think that we're very fortunate in the state of Texas to have individuals that can continue to come back even in the face of adversaries sometimes. I have to personally talk about my trauma program. Our trauma program, we started a trauma nurse clinician program back in 1992. That program is now 20 years old as well, so I'm very happy for that. So the last thing I'd like to do in open discussion is if you've completed a higher level of educational degree, and that this is May, a lot of people are going to be graduating, stand up. Anybody else? I know that there's a lot of people that are in school. Al? Good. I just want to commend you because not only have you worked full-time, but you've also pursued your education, so I think that's a tremendous benefit to our organization. Anybody else have any open comments that they want to bring forward?
Probably for survival, for getting out of this room. We mentioned this is Trauma Month and the EMS week is coming up. This is Nurses Week this week. So we need to express appreciation.
So can we make a commitment not to refer to anybody as Nurse Ratchet for the end of the week? Eric? Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Open discussion, someone wants to question? Step to the mic.
Just on behalf of the Texas Trauma Coordinators Forum as president, we, a part of our great meeting we had today with well over 100 trauma coordinators. They had a designation course the day before that Scott Christopher was very instrumental in producing as on our 8th annual. And just so you guys know for the record that TTCF, as a result of Texas Trauma Coordinators, in November we'll be celebrating our official chartered anniversary. So,
20 years.
And for 20 years, and I know Jory was an instrumental part of that. Have some original notes where about 10 or 11 of you guys sat around a table at a bar somewhere, I think. But anyway, so just on behalf of the trauma coordinators today, we had a very strong meeting. Courtney's engagement in the education, Kara Tapley with our Everybody Lessons Falls. A whole lot of folks are really important in that organization. So just know that the trauma coordinators are engaged. We're talking to Garrett, we're talking to Irene, we're trying to put our interest in and our input so that you guys know that we are engaged in that organization. So, thanks.
Congratulations. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Dr. Gandhi.
Raj Gandhi, RAC Chair E. One thing we need to make sure we cover are the small institutions and the small EMS that do not have the resources to be able to put into a registry. Most of us are in large areas. We have no problems in terms of resources. We can make do. But I think TETAF needs to take that role as well, the small guys out there. And again, I'm from a fairly large RAC, so we don't have an issue, but I think we need to, within our own RAC, take care of the small EMS. That's it. Thank you so much.
I think Dr. Gandhi has a point that I would just like to more clarification on, and Garrett kind of talked about it. If you were present last night, you heard about it, is that there's one way to look at the state registry as a gathering of data and then an analysis of data. And in that process, that's all they're doing is gathering and doing the analysis, not helping you manage your data in your institution. So the other side to look at it is that if you don't have a registry, you can use this registry, so you're going to build all these extra components into it to be able to do that. And so I know it's already been talked about it, but from the groups that are present here, you know, I just want to know how many of you think it would be better if we just said we're going to be in the business of gathering data and using analysis to use that data to make decisions for the state? Raise your hands. Only a couple of you. How many of you think that the registry should be built so that if you don't have a working registry in your hospital, you can use that registry to do your data collection in your PI and manage your trauma center? Raise your hands. I think, to be honest with you, I think that's a very difficult piece here, because I think doing the data collection and data analysis is easy. To build a functional trauma registry and you don't have any working knowledge of a functional registry or trauma center is the hard part. Dr. Gandhi?
I think if TETAF was to get that role, then the state would hand that role over to TETAF. Just as they did the surveying role, because that's what the mandate says. If there is a body that does a function that's currently within the state, then that function needs to go over to that extra state entity.
Here's the problem with that. In 1992, another 20-year anniversary, the Board of Health made the decision that the trauma registry that was in the division of the Texas Department of Health under the trauma section, they made the decision to pull it out of trauma and push it over to epidemiology. Ever since it's been in epidemiology, there's been a lot of questions about where does this registry rank in the priorities. They have birth defects, they have the cancer registry, the AIDS registry, and so on, an immunization registry. So that is part of our great challenge, is at that state level, because the state said we're not going to do designation, but that's in the house of the trauma, not necessarily with the epidemiology.
But again, what you may be doing is taking away an issue or obstacle that epidemiology may have, so you may be helping them by taking that out of their purview.
Yeah. Let me ask the question a little bit different. So if, let's say TETAF found a grant, all of you hospitals who don't have a registry, if TETAF found a grant, they could get you a registry to plug into your hospital that's your registry, would you consider that option? And then all you have is a registry that collects data and does the data analysis, like the National Trauma Data Bank. How many of you?
yeah.
How many of you say yes? I got a hell yeah. A couple of you? Everybody in this room that doesn't have a working registry in your house that you use the state, stand up. Stand up, Scott. Stand up. If you don't have a registry and you use Track It, stand up. Now, wait, don't sit back down. Now, here's the question. Here's the question. If we bought a registry and sent to your hospital, would you use that registry and then send your data to the state? I think that's a critical question for us to ask, is how many hospitals don't have a registry? How much money would it take to buy and put registries in those hospitals?
Jory, here. I think it's the Lord, Noah. Yeah, one of the other questions, I appreciate your point, but there's, I believe, perhaps to Eric's point earlier, there is probably capacity in existing registries that can be matched against the gaps in some of the facilities who perceive to not have them. And maybe that's where TETAF can come together in surveying, doing that matching, statewide. Maybe that's the solution.
I agree. And so the next question would be, how much money would you charge for people to use, to go into the Reggie, to use that Trauma Service Area E? And Eric, how much money would you charge for people to go into the DI database that you guys have to be able to use that as a functional registry? I think so. There's 3 different options that we could propose back to individuals tomorrow.
So I'm the proponent of option 1 for what you said. The reason we are where we are today, because of tracking and because where we are in this effort right now, is because we wanted to try to get it all. We wanted a registry to use inside a hospital for their own internal purposes. We're willing to give the state of Texas all your internal complications. There's this, they haven't done anything in 12 years. Why would you put your complications in their database? But we need to build step 1. How many people wear seat belts in regs? Really, after 12 years, how about we go for phase 1 and build a state registry that can receive data like the NTDB does? That's all it has to do. You go, well, some smaller hospitals are not able to submit because there's not a tool for them to use. That's a state health department problem. They're building that for you as fast as they can. We have to look for the 80% solution. I've got a buddy of mine, his daughter was injured. There's no HIE in the country that she was in. There's no way to get her home. She was on a cruise. And she's sick. He thinks she's sick, it sounds like. They used their iPhones and Dropbox, and they took pictures of the x-ray on the view screen and sent them by Dropbox and things and did those. This is the 80% solution. I'm not trying to solve this completely. But we have trauma centers from level 4s all the way through to all the level 1s that have tons and thousands and hundreds of thousands of trauma patients that we ought to be able to demonstrate. And if we get the 80% solution and we have it solved for the smallest facility that doesn't have a registry inside, Jory, I think you're spot on. We should take the money we spent on this other thing and buy them in brand X, collector, whatever, install it, read whatever it is, install it. It'd be cheaper. And then we'd have data in every hospital. They'd have their own internal processes, and we could submit to the Texas registry that looks just like ATDB, and we can send forth the data. And that's what we should be doing instead of trying to invent the Ferrari Winnebago thing. It never works out. We've got 12 years of failure. And I don't know how much money, seriously. $5 million on tracking, and I don't know what we spent so far. Does anybody know? I'd like the real number.
I don't know the real number, but there was 3.2 budgeted.
So we're at 8.2, that all of us know for sure, right? We can all say that safely. Probably more. This is...
So tomorrow, I think this is, again, we can bring up these options. The question that I have, I know I can't go off on a limb here, but I'm pretty sure that Parkland would be willing to take smaller hospitals and help with them with their registry. They have to collect the paper piece, and then we could help enter it and send it off. There's probably 4 options that are out there. So.
Our RAC has a regional registry that all of our folks in our RAC submit to, and ours works, and we don't charge.
Well, that was what I was trying to bring up is the options would be to do the National Trauma Data Bank model and then to focus our attention on building RAC registries that are robust. That still leaves these hospitals that don't have registries. So those hospitals that don't have registries, we're either going to have to tap into a RAC registry where they can manage the data, or have another hospital help them, or buy a registry or acquire a registry. So those are the issues that are out there as far as I'm concerned.
What about the EMS providers that are required to report? We gotta include them in this mix, don't we?
But does NIMSIS allow that? I mean, is NIMSIS a
NIMSIS 3
functioning
solves.
registry?
NIMSIS 3 solves a lot of it. Most of the agencies, frankly, are using their billing companies nowadays to submit. Either they use their EPCR software, or if they don't, they have that. In our region, our biggest problem with the billing companies that didn't give them the reports back and they didn't check it. That's what we get the gap. And that's our area, so I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for the state. So we keep talking about using the regional registries to enter data. I don't. That's the one that actually knows our president. So I think you have, in our area, our regional registry only accepts data as a report from a hospital registry,
Correct.
right? They can't go to www.strac.org and just enter patients into our regional registry.
No, but
Now, I think they can do that with yours.
Correct.
Right. What's yours? They're not, well, we have like their system.
but you could build that. You could build it.
Yeah, the disk has to be, come from the software. Okay. So,
They have a web version. You could do that if you chose to do that, just like they did.
okay.
So, and I can't speak for trauma base or trauma one, but the bottom line is I think all those registries are fairly competitive.
There is a web version of trauma business.
So we have a couple of things to solve. One is the smallest hospital that doesn't have a registry today. What are they using today?
They put them in directly into Trackit.
Okay, do they keep doing that? When they're doing it today, can they do that tomorrow? What's wrong with that? Is that a problem?
You can't get your data.
That's okay. They're getting their compliance issues. They're checking their box. Okay.
But that,
No, it's not worthless. That data someday will go somewhere. You're solving the one, I am not in 100% solution. I'm improving a point mode. You're missing, what we need to do over the next 6 months is prove a point that a bunch of people who are irritated can get more done on our own without $8.2 million than the bureaucracy with $8.2 million. That's all I want to prove. This is not going to solve it. But if everybody can send a disk, your people send a disk to your registry, they send a disk to another place as well, and suddenly we've got 400,000 records for 6 months, and you go, holy mackerel, look at that. That's doable in like 2 conference calls. This is not rocket surgery. Seriously, that's my point. I'm not trying to solve this for the state of Texas. I really am not. I'm trying to prove a point.
I think everybody is in the room wants to prove a point. So the bottom line is there's options. You could fix, you want to do an 80% solution, you could do a 100% solution if you look at options to get these registries. And those options would be regional registries, buy them a registry, or have another hospital help them, in addition to the other piece.
I would do that after you prove the point. Now they're listening.
Okay.
That's when I would have we have some other ideas. We could formulate those instead of trying to do it for tomorrow and present the 3 options. Is it pretty obvious? I would prove the point.
It's the
It's
father
like in an
perspective
animal
and
house,
mother
they all
perspective.
start singing the Star Spangled Banner and walk out. And that's what we need to, I'm not going to stand here while you insult the United States of America. It's like we just need to walk out. I mean, it's, never mind. I'm excited.
Hey, George.
Not the first, yes, sir.
Just a comment. I mean, one of the things that has the potential, as I listened to the discussion around the room, some of the grass that looked greener that we just talked about could have been a worse disaster than what we have now. So we could have a lot of efforts where if you're this hospital, you use this regional registry. I mean, we have to be very careful that we don't duct tape and caulk together a system that's going to have to grow. So as the state grows, we'd really like to hit Alt F2, whatever that is, and everybody grow. If we have a lot of different really good solutions that work regionally or locally, we're going to be in the same, little pickle down the road. The other thing that I would suggest is maybe tomorrow This is going to sound screwy, and this is like the anti-Eric here. But maybe tomorrow is no solutions. Maybe tomorrow are just questions. And, you know, we didn't solve it tonight. Nobody had the best solution tonight. Everybody's frustrated, rightfully so. I'm guessing there's probably the same kind of meeting on the state side, frustration-wise. Maybe tomorrow are just a very, very civil series of frank discussion, questions about when, what are the alternatives, when can we see X, Y, or Z, what do you plan on doing with it? And I know those questions have been asked before, but there is a significant amount of calming effect for questions that sends a message something is about to change. So if there's only questions and there are no potential solutions, I'm just gathering data, we need to understand, we'll be back with you. That sends a very powerful message that it's thoughtful, fixing it before saying, hey, here's what we ought to do. You know, I got Acme Rock Registry here, and that could work very well. So it's a suggestion that might keep the nuclear cloud from happening, but may send a more powerful message that something really large needs to change this whole mess. It's held my marriage together longer than it probably should have. It seemed to have worked pretty well, just asking.
Anybody else in the audience want to comment on Dr. Rock's recommendation? So that what he's recommending is that we go tomorrow with the peace pipe and ask questions. Does everybody agree with that? And have the solutions as a backup?
Well, I think we just need to do our homework and make sure our solutions are rock solid before we throw them out on the table. So and we may be at that point almost already, but we just need to make sure.
I just would caution the group. What I just heard a minute ago were no solutions. They were a bunch of great ideas, but none of them fit. So if we go back, we're going to do the same thing that potentially we see them doing to us, and we may just create the same kind of, here we are again.
Well, let me recommend one thing is tomorrow I'll have a PowerPoint for the Trauma Systems Committee. I'll try to station myself around 12 noon. You can find me. So if you have comments about today's discussion, come and find me so that we can make sure that we move forward with a united front, let's just say. Okay? Any May action items we need to move forward with? We're going to approve the minutes. Donnie, you want to go over the next meetings and the priorities?
The next meeting we will have will be a conference call June 6th. We will not have a conference call in July. It coincides with July 4th, and we found in the past that that's not very well attended. And so then our next face-to-face meeting will be in August, which is the Tuesday of GTAC, 4:30 division meetings, 5:30 the general meeting. And at that meeting, we will, at that point, we'll know where we are with our dues and how many are participating, and be able to forecast for our next budget, which we will, actually the Finance Committee is going to need to start working on here soon, is formulating our budget for starting September 1st. And then we will also have some decisions. We should be well into our planning for our fundraiser, because we will report on that in June and start moving forward with what we want to do for our fundraiser in November.
The other question I have is elections. The elections are in...
May 29th is the primary election. Do go vote. Your vote really will matter this time, because with the primaries, there are well, not that they don't count usually, but they're a little weighted this time around, because with the presidential election, or presidential primaries already done, the turnout is going to be very, very low is what they anticipate. So encourage you to get out and vote. And then obviously there will be the November election where there will be a lot more interest. But it looks like in the House, the Texas House of Representatives, there will potentially be one of the largest freshman classes coming in with redistricting and potentially 40 to 50 new members coming in. So there's going to be a lot of education that we'll be needing to do. Then with TETAF, our elections, just to sort of meld it all together, we will take nominations starting in August, and then we will have our elections in November. And I believe David and Jory and Jim are the two on the executive board, and then Dr. Ryan and Rick. Just nod your head. So if you have an interest in serving on the TETAF board, I would appreciate you considering. Although we love our current board members, so I don't mean.
Any other comments before we adjourn? Take a motion to adjourn? Let's do it. Second.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much for your time.